The second season of Supergirl premiered October 10th, 2016 on the CW network. With a lower budget, filming in Vancouver, and 3 new major characters, Callista Flockhart, Jenna Dewan, and Peter Facinelli were not brought back as recurring characters. Of the 3, only Flockhart's Grant made appearances. In their place, Chris Wood, Floriana Lima, and Katie McGrath were cast as Mon-El, Maggie Sawyer, and Lena Luthor, respectively. There's problems with all of them, and I will address them, but at the beginning of the second season I have to address something rather good. Somehow, despite all odds, this show made a good Superman. Like something that the last 4 Superman movies weren't able to do. They made Superman likable, charming, empathetic, and most importantly, human. It helps that Clark and Kal-El were both equally enjoyable, and he was both brave and kind as both, just in different ways. So no matter what I'm about to say as I get into the many, many problems with Season 2, just know that they got Superman right. Alright, now let's stare into the void. I'm not going to go episode by episode this time, as it takes forever, but 3 big changes happen within the first 2 episodes. 1, Kara and Winn both get new careers. Kara becomes a reporter, and Winn becomes a DEO agent. 2, Catco is bought out by one Lena Luthor, and Cat Grant leaves the show. And 3, James and Kara break up, and a new man drops into the city. The career change for Winn is fine. It's obviously just trying to ride the success that Cisco on The Flash brought, but this by itself isn't a problem. Making Kara a reporter, though, just feels lazy. I've talked before about how cliched it is to have reporters as main characters in superhero stories, but with Kara, this is going against her origins as a character with diverse interests, including being a student counselor, which I think would be an amazing way to have her hear about the villains of the week. Whatever, that's relatively minor, I suppose. Lena Luthor I will address in a bit. But the breaking up of James and Kara, after less than 1 full episode of them being consciously in a relationship, is egregious. All of last season was spent building up to a place where they can be together, and immediately they break up. The justification in-universe is that Kara isn't ready for a relationship, I guess. That lasts less than half of a season. Out of universe, the stated justification is that the 2 were too good at being friends to give that up. You know, because friends aren't actually friends if they're dating each other. Oh, also, by making Kara's new base of operations at the DEO, the 2 spend far less time being friends anyways. Instead of James, Kara ends up with new character, Mon-El, a dirtbag rich boy that negs her into liking him, despite her protestations. Ignoring the actual reason Kara and James didn't stay together for a moment, this is horribly sexist. If a man and a woman both are interested in each other and choose to be together, it's wrong or boring or uninteresting. Instead, women should fall in love with the men that are rude to them, act like children when they don't get their way, and need them to teach them how to be at least a semi-decent person. Now, the real reason Kara and James are broken up, out of universe, is actually something we've talked about before on this channel. But in this case, I don't think that it was the showrunners' racism that broke them up. Not that they aren't racist, but it wasn't theirs. After all, these are the same showrunners that had Lila and Diggle, Curtis and Nick, Connor and Mia, which is horrible, Barry and Iris, Cisco and Camilla, the Hawks, Nate and Maya, Nate and Zari, on and on and on and on. These showrunners themselves are not opposed to interracial relationships. Far from it. Are they always good? No, absolutely not. In some cases, like with Mia and Connor, they're so blatantly about propping up the white character. But, still, at the very least, the showrunners aren't the no miscegenations type. But the fans? Oh, they certainly are. Like I said, they would rather ship an abusive white relationship than healthy interracial one. And did they ever hate James Olsen for looking at their white heroine? There were online magazine publications, petitions, blog posts, and videos dedicating to tearing down James, as well as Mehcad Brooks, labeling him as creepy and a fetishist, despite him being the only person on the first season that could potentially have a healthy relationship with Kara. The fans were horrible to him, and the showrunners listened to their fans. Just as a disclaimer, this isn't to say that black women in media don't get hatred from non-black fans. Worse, they absolutely do. But in the case of Iris West, the showrunners thankfully, wisely ignored the hate rather than capitulating to it. Now, as for Lena Luthor, the show seems to have a deep desire to frame billionaires as good, as long as they are liberal and are hinted to donate to charity on occasion. So that's the role that Lena is here to fulfill. Well, also another role, but I'll get to that. By bringing in another heroic billionaire to fund the supposedly unbiased news publisher Catco, the showrunner shows exactly how they want things to work. Those at the top, provided they meet a couple of requirements, are to control the things below them, including the news published about them. In episode 3, we meet the other two new characters, the love interests for the Danvers sisters this season, Mon-El and Maggie Sawyer. Both characters are from the comics, and both characters are a bit of a downgrade. Why? Well, for Mon-El, it's the desire to make a romantic lead that gets rid of the best parts of his character. In the comics, Lar-Gan's story is a sorrowful one. Due to Clark's test to see if he was truly Kryptonian, he was exposed to lead, poisoning him and requiring him to spend 1,000 years in the Phantom Zone until a cure was found. After losing his home on Daxam, he loses his new home in Smallville, mere days after making it. Yet, despite these losses, Lar-Gan remains valorous and confident. Not cocky, but unwilling to give up when protecting the innocent. He wasn't a Superboy clone, of course. He got angry, he pushed limits, and he was willing to take lives. But that driving desire to protect the innocent came before any of his faults. So wouldn't it be funny if he was a dude bro? Throughout the second season, Mon-El, his real name in this, is misogynistic, classist, elitist, and rude. And it's all tied under the guise of humor, but when those bad traits are portrayed as something that Kara needs to fix before she lets him sleep with her, it suggests that sexism needs to be ironed out by women, and then that men that improve themselves to a basic, decent human level should be rewarded with sex. That's sexist. And that's not even getting into the fact that Mon-El owned slaves as an adult. Sure, he may say he doesn't agree with slavery, but Thomas Jefferson said the same thing. Kara's forgiveness of him is ultimately forgiving him of a crime of which she was not the victim, and very much another white feminist moment on this show. Speaking of which, part of the problem with Maggie Sawyer is the whitewashing. Now, if you don't know anything about the show, you might say, is that whitewashing? I mean, isn't it the opposite? Maggie in the comics is white, but in the show, she's Latina. If that were the case, it would be the opposite. However, Floriana Lima is not Latina. She has an ethnic background comprised of multiple Western European ethnicities, but she is not Latina. Again, though, you might say, how is that whitewashing? Well, the showrunners specifically said that they were bringing in a Latina actress to play Maggie, and Maggie explicitly says that she's not white. If they wanted to cast a white actress with a tan as Maggie Sawyer, that would be no problem. But to say that a European woman is Latin American is a crappy thing to do. And we haven't begun talking about her role in the show. So, Alex Danvers comes out this year. Sort of. Rather, she needs to be told that she is a lesbian before she knows it. Maggie tells Alex that Alex is a lesbian, and when Alex protests, Maggie says that she knows Alex is because other lesbians have protested before. So, making a Latina character a woman that decides and asserts other characters' sexualities for them, no wonder they couldn't find a gay Latina for this role. Alex doesn't realize she's a lesbian, she has to be persuaded into being one. Add in the supposed non-whiteness of Maggie, and we've got another trope where the innocent white lesbian has to be seduced by the exciting, sexually experienced lesbian of color. This subplot is sexist, homophobic, and racist, and it takes up the majority of Alex's plot this season. But hey, we do get a Latina actress in episode 3, Lynda Carter. Legendary actress, singer-songwriter, best known for playing Wonder Woman, is brought on as President Olivia Marsden, a fantastic actress playing a likable character named after two of the creators of Wonder Woman. What's not to love? Well, at the end of the episode, it's revealed that President Marsden is actually a shape-shifting alien. The first Latina president of the United States, played by a biracial woman, wasn't actually born in the country. Instead, she's an illegal alien. Yeah. This, of course, is another in a long line of people of color on the show, as well as several other franchises playing non-human aliens. This includes the introduction of Miss Martian, who has been creepily aged up to be a love interest for Jean. Over the next group of episodes, McGann reveals herself to be a white Martian, one of the ethnic group that led a genocide against Jean's. However, as McGann was actually resisting the majority of white Martians and supporting green Martians, Jean is willing to forgive her. This would be more powerful, in my opinion, without the romance, but there are worse storylines this season. But, while Kara is training Mon-El in the episode Crossfire, James decides that he wants to have a subplot of his own, as he becomes the superhero Guardian. Originally a Jack Kirby creation, Guardian has a lot of differences in this show. His bright colors are taken away, and it's a different person under the mask, but in terms of abilities and motivations, he's very similar. Well, this means that he's adopting another non-Jimmy Olsen character from the comics. Just like with Ron Troop, Brooks plays this pretty well. Unfortunately, he also takes Winn along to be his guy in the chair, which means we get more of him. Winn also gets a new love interest in Lyra, a character best described as a nice guy trademark fantasy. Just by showing up to the first date, she has sex with him, and she always appreciates his intrusion into her private life. She used to use men for their money, but it took one nice guy to change her into a steady, loyal girlfriend. She may be too emotional sometimes, and if she says she doesn't care for someone, she's obviously lying. But she knows that she's wrong, and will apologize and learn to be subservient to her man. Once again, this show would be much better off without Winn in it. I suppose I should at least mention the crossovers. The second is a musical crossover episode with The Flash, which it's not terrible, but it's not quite as good as the Batman, the Brave and the Bold episode that's clearly trying to outdo. The first, however, is a general crossover with the other three shows that are currently in the Arrowverse. It's not bad either, but if I was a Supergirl fan and I tuned in just to see how Kara develops throughout the crossover, I would be disappointed. It's not really until the next season that the crossovers start to include Supergirl in a more active role. Next, we have Luthor's, but before we get into that, let's talk about Smallville. One of the undeniable reasons that Smallville worked was the desire of the audience to see Lex Luthor be good, despite all of the reasons we expect him not to be. He's adapted from one of the most evil characters in DC Comics. He has a horribly manipulative and evil father. He lies, he womanizes, he is regularly abused and targeted. He has more money than one should morally possess, and for the first handful of seasons, we want him to be good. It's moments where he shows genuine kindness and empathy that I remember from the show, and his friendship with Clark was so great that even though we knew how it would end, we still held out hope that things could be better. But with Lena, that's not really the case. From the beginning, we're told that she doesn't want to be like a Luthor, and for the entire season, she never does anything that the show thinks is worth condemning. I mean, don't get me wrong, she still does very bad things, like developing a non-consensual DNA scanner for civilian use, but the show reprimands Kara for thinking poorly of her for this. She knows about Roulette's slave-based gladiator system, but that is portrayed as being useful knowledge for the protagonists, not being her complicit in atrocities. And James distrusts her, but he is shown to have been discriminated against her based off from her family name. But still, though there are some similarities, why does Smallville's Luthor work, whereas Supergirl's Luthor fails? I think, mainly, is what is seen as evil about Lex and Lena by the main characters' friends. Jonathan, Martha, and Pete distrust Lex due to the fact that he makes money off of the hardship of others while putting forth no physical labor himself, that he manipulates law and society through his capital, and because he turns a blind eye to the shady business practices done in his midst. He may not be as guilty as Lionel, early on, but he's complicit, having risen to a position of power due to his father's mistreatment of working-class Kansas that he hasn't really done much to oppose. With Lena, well, she's a Luthor. You know, you shouldn't trust a Luthor. She's got that last name, Luthor, so don't trust her. Oh, is she incredibly helpful and friendly to the main character? Is the main character related to a villain that tried to enslave the world last season? Does she actually do things worth questioning? Well, who cares? The main problem with her is that she's a Luthor, and Luthors are not to be trusted. And because she does have more money than one can morally possess, and because she is comfortable with violating the privacy of others, and because she holds knowledge of illegal slave rings from the authorities, it makes it difficult to like Kara, as she repeatedly sticks up for her friend. Of course, fandom loved Lena, as she made an age-appropriate white woman to ship Kara with, and hated that James dared to doubt her, leading to even more hatred for him. Finally, there's the narrative arc of the season. Mon-El's parents show up to Earth demanding that he return home to them. He refuses, as he loves Kara, and they act like they accept it. His mother, Rhea, played by former Lois Lane Terry Hatcher, which is cool, doesn't actually accept, and instead kills her husband, invades Earth, tortures Superman, and kidnaps her son, forcing him into an arranged marriage with Lena. This is all terrible, of course, for the main characters, but it's also something that I need to mention, to be able to talk about in Season 4. Rhea manipulates Lena into helping her by appealing to her humanity. She claims to have noble intentions, but this is a ruse. This is an invasion, literally. It's a foreign military committing acts of terrorism on the US, and it's not the first time either. Keep this in mind, that while this show may profess to be liberal and may pretend that they cast women of color in major roles, and may propose to be pro-immigrant, they have willingly and consistently portrayed immigrants, refugees, and foreigners as dangerous, untrustworthy, and conniving, while the only good immigrants are ones that are subservient to the United States government. They'll try to change their tune in the future, but for now the message is uncomfortably clear. Anti-immigrant messaging aside, Season 2 is a season of love, of changes, and of very weird creative choices. I'd personally place this as the worst season of the bunch, although, of course, the show's not over. As I end, I'd ask that commenters keep their comments about Crisis on Infinite Earths spoiler-free for anyone that hasn't watched it yet. Thanks for listening.